BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Phil Goodlad and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. We're into the final week of November, Tuesday the 26th. Here's what's on our agenda today.
His most recent job was at Manchester United, and perhaps Manchester United are not especially renowned for being a well-run club, particularly over the last decade. But I wouldn't necessarily put a lot of that at Patrick Stewart's door.
After months of uncertainty, there's a new CEO in town at Rangers. We'll find out what Patrick Stewart will bring to the role. We'll also take a look at what looks a huge game at Easter Road.
I still believe we are good enough to get out of it, out of the trouble we're in the position we're in the league at the moment. But there's certainly no time to feel sorry for ourselves again. We've got a game against Aberdeen, which will be another tough test, and they need to be ready for that.
Can David Gray stop Hibs from self-destructing this time? And the unbeaten record is gone.
Again, it's towards the back post, the header down and in! Richard Taylor buries the O'Hara corner! And then Aberdeen staring down the barrel of their first league defeat of the season!
How will Aberdeen and Jimmy Talline react to their first league defeat of the season?
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Great to have you along this morning. I'm joined by a couple of old hands when it comes to waxing lyrical about Scottish football. Lee Miller, former Aberdeen striker, fresh from glory from the Masters last week. Lee, you looked as if time hasn't aged you at all with a ball at your feet.
I don't know about that. I'm still struggling just now, and that's probably 2 weeks after it. No, it was
Did you enjoy it?
Oh, it was good. It was a great laugh. Really good laugh. Good to see all the players I played against, players I played with, and it was a great crowd up in Aberdeen. And listen, I still don't know how we won that. Probably because we had Joe Lewis and Johnny Hayes. But no, I enjoyed every minute of it. Although I got injured quite early bells, but just plodded on through it.
Well, I think the biggest question of the night is just what type of moisturiser Ian Jess is using. I mean, the man is about 147 and looks like he still plays football. Incredible.
He's so fit. The thing is, he lives in Barcelona, plays paddle 3 times a week. He's just fit as a fiddle. So he's a great lad, and it was good to catch up with them all.
Liam McLennan is from the Hibs Ramble podcast. Liam, let's pretend that all is well at Easter Road before we actually get into the reality. How much did you enjoy watching the totem striker that is Liam Miller at the Masters football last week?
Oh, it was brilliant. I was just saying to him off air that he was the bane of my life growing up, because every time he came to Easter Road, he seemed to score against us. So this is maybe a little bit of a meet your maker moment for me.
Yeah. Well, let's have an after-hour Scottish Football Daily podcast, and we should invite fans who dislike players so much when they were growing up that they can vent at them. That's maybe one for the festive period that we can get. The other person who I want to bring in, and he's going to join us very quickly at the start of the podcast before we let him go, is Mark Critchley from The Athletic, specifically to join us to speak about Patrick Stewart, the new sheriff in town at Ibrox. Mark, morning to you.
Good morning, chaps. How are we doing?
We're fine. I think it's probably best to spell out straight away. We're not talking about an aged Hollywood actor who has got the chief executive's job at Rangers. But Patrick Stewart is a chief executive that has a bit of pedigree.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people will have seen that his most recent job was at Manchester United, and perhaps Manchester United are not especially renowned for being a well-run club, particularly over the last decade. But I wouldn't necessarily put a lot of that at Patrick Stewart's door. He joined in 2006, not long after the Glazer takeover, but he spent the majority of the 18 years that he was at Old Trafford as the general counsel. So essentially, he was United's top lawyer. So he was the guy that was signing off on absolutely everything from a legal perspective, whether it was transfers, whether it's contract extensions, whether it was sponsorships. And, commercial deals, he would have been in the room and making sure everything was right, correct and legal over massive sponsorship deals like the Chevrolet one that they signed in 2012, 560 million. It was a record, I think, at the time. There was a 900 million deal for Adidas that they signed last year. That was a record as well. He would have played a key role in the club being listed on the New York Stock Exchange. So he is a guy that, was responsible for everything, making sure everything was compliant and legal at United over maybe a not a successful time on the pitch, but certainly a successful time off it in a commercial sense. Yeah.
What I'm about to say is no disrespect to Rangers or their fans, so don't start writing your complaints just yet. But given Patrick Stewart has such a background, as you say, a successful background in Manchester United, what would be the attraction to coming to Rangers, a club that appears to be struggling both on and off the park?
Well, look, like I say, he was at United, he was the top lawyer, but I mean, he wasn't necessarily the CEO. I mean, he was for these final 6 months there. He was appointed interim CEO when Richard Arnold left this time last year. But it's been a year of upheaval at United, right? There's been a lot of change. And in the end, he was only in that role for 6 months. So there wasn't much decision-making capacity, really, especially while you're waiting for a new CEO to come in the form of Omar Barada. So I think when he left in April, there was a sense that perhaps he would look to take on another executive role, one that did carry more decision-making weight and power. And that's exactly what he's done. And I think that's the attraction for him. I think it would be a move that he would see as ambitious and the next step to take on the ladder, if you like. And, I think you look at, some of the executives that have left Old Trafford over the last few years and a lot of change. Not too many have walked into big football clubs, but I think it's a testament to Patrick Stewart's reputation and the standing with which he was held at United that he's, managed to secure a top executive job at a club like Rangers, which is still, for everything you say, it's still a massive, massive club, right?
And he, at Manchester United, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Mark, but he didn't seem to be somebody that was very prominent in the boardroom position. We weren't hearing a lot about Patrick Stewart over the last 20 years at Old Trafford, but that will change the morning he starts at Ibrox because it's such a high-profile role at such a high-profile club. Do you think that he will be equipped to handle the focus that will be on him personally as a chief executive?
Well, look, I think you're absolutely right that it's slightly different because going from essentially being United's top lawyer to being a guy who has that decision-making power and authority and influence is a very different step. And, I think, almost chief executives are probably like referees and that it's probably best if you don't notice them, right? And you don't know what they're getting up to. But for him, I think, yeah, look, he's got the track record, he's got the pedigree. In his role, even when he was general counsel at United, he was appointed to the board in 2019, the football club board, and then he was appointed to the parent company board. There's two different boards at United. It's quite confusing. But essentially, within that role, even though you wouldn't have the public profile, you would have the responsibility often for maintaining relationships with key people like the Premier League, with the FA, with the UEFA. He worked with the ECA, which is the kind of European Clubs Association. So that was a role where you would need to, I think that relationship in particular, especially after the Super League stuff, required a lot of management. And, he was key in kind of rebuilding that. So he's somebody who, has been in the room in these big situations, even if you haven't heard his name before. And so he has the relevant experience, the necessary experience. And yeah, there's no reason to think just because his name perhaps wasn't on the lips of every United fan that he hasn't got the know-how and what he needs to know in order to do a job like this properly.
And Mark, I'm going to let you go after this because I know you need to head off, but a lot of chief executives, like in any job, when they come in, they want to get their feet under the table. They want to get a feel for what the business, what the club is, and then maybe make their decisions for long-term progress. The morning that he starts is the morning after the League Cup final where Rangers take on Celtic. And a lot of the newspapers this morning are linking his first potential decision as a chief executive perhaps coming if Celtic do a job on Rangers. It could be to make a statement or indeed a change in the dugout. Is that something that he will be ready for, the linking for the chief executive role into the direct response to what's happening on the pitch?
I think it says a lot about Rangers' season so far that this game's almost a month away and everybody's already expected them to lose it, right? But no, I think look, yeah, he will be fully aware of the responsibilities of the role and the demands of it. I think any chief executive, when they go in, they need to, yes, they have decision-making authority, but it's also, they're the ones that are going to have to define the structure. And I know that it's Niels Koppen, isn't it, who's been appointed technical director this week, has been moved up from his recruitment role. So, look, I don't know what Rangers operations will necessarily all funnel into Patrick Stewart. But I'm sure he's walking into this role with his eyes wide open and knowing exactly the challenges that Rangers have had this season and that they may continue to have and that he may have on his desk first thing in the morning when he starts work.
Mark Critchley from The Athletic, thank you very much indeed. Fascinating to hear about Rangers' new chief executive. Mark, thank you.
Nice one, cheers.
Well, moving on, it's a huge game at Easter Road tonight, both at the bottom of the table, but also at the top. Aberdeen trying to get back to winning ways. They can go level on points with Celtic with a win. The focus for the next few minutes, though, is at Hibs, and I'm delighted to say that we can talk all things Hibs with Liam McLennan from the Hibs Ramble podcast. Liam, is this D-Day for Hibs, for their season, and ultimately for David Gray?
I don't think so. I don't think that this is D-Day. You look at the form that Aberdeen have been on this season, I don't think that it would be fair for David Gray to maybe get the chop after this game if we get beat. Aberdeen have been sensational this season and they've been blowing every team out the water, obviously apart from St Mirren the other night. But listen, it's a very, very difficult time to be a Hibs fan at the moment because we all love David Gray, of course we do. But the fact of the matter is we're not winning the games and we're kind of torn in half whether we want David Gray to go and there be a change or to stay and try and make it work. It's a very, very difficult time for us at the moment.
I know that you love David Gray. He's a club hero. But it's that love actually blinding you from almost what the results are showing. I mean, it's 1 win in 13 in the league list this season. You go back to 1 win in 16 if you take in the end of the last campaign. You had a public show of support last week from the board. It almost feels like we're moving towards the inevitable. And I just wonder whether his standing at the club is actually looking after him at the moment, but is almost hindering you as a club because you don't want to make the change.
I think so. And I think the fact that the last couple of managers, maybe going back to Sean Maloney, have had such little time, really, at the club. It's one of these where I always say you can't keep sacking managers, but, you know, at the end of the day, the bottom line is you can keep sacking managers, but if you keep hiring ones that aren't going to do a job, then you've got to keep sacking them. I do think that his stature at the club is probably blinding a lot of fans. Certainly me. I'm definitely one of them. But I really, really, really want it to work out, and I've got the feeling that he will, given the time, end up turning it around, because I think if we made the change now, then in 6 months' time or at the end of the season, if we're not any better, then we're going to just change the manager again. And we're going to then be playing, you know, with our 7th, 8th manager under the Gordons, playing with 7 or 8 managers ago players. And I think that's where the problem is the players that we've got have had so many clean slates and they've not been able to get the results for where we want to be as a club. And I think that's where the problem lies.
Lee, I'm maybe just a big softie. I hate speaking about the inevitability of what may be happening to a manager. And even talking there about Patrick Stewart's first day in the job, coming the morning after the League Cup final, and there may be a decision made about Philippe Clement. As a player, does this affect you at all when you're taking to the field on a bad run and there's so much swirl of media chat about whether the manager is going to lose his job?
Me personally, I've obviously been both sides of it. As a player, it didn't affect me. I just went out and played, and you wanted to do the best that you could do, because at the end of the day, you're in the shop. Every time you step onto the pitch, you're in the shop window. So for me, how the Hibs players, they don't look as if they're turning up. Whether they've chucked it, whatever it is, they need to start upping their game. They need to start. It's the players for me, and the players have actually come out and said it. You listen to all the comments that they're making. They're saying, "Listen, it's down to us. It's not the manager." So David Gray seems to have the backing of the players, but they just keep making individual mistakes, and it's punishing them. That game at the
Is that pressure? Is that the pressure on them at the bottom amid the run just now that they're making these mistakes?
there's always pressure on football teams. There's always pressure on players. You look at Motherwell last season; they went through a 15 game without a win, and they stuck with Kettlewell, and the players stuck with them. The players were coming out constantly saying, "Listen, it's not the manager; it's us. We need to up a game," and then it just turns, and they just stick with it, and then they start getting results. But Hibs, they just don't. They seem to be playing well enough, and then obviously the last 10 minutes of games, obviously excluding that game at the weekend there, but they just make mistakes, and then they just, as soon as they make that first mistake or the first goal goes in against them, they seem to have their heads down and things just don't go right for them, and everything that could go wrong for David Gray just now is going wrong for him. But I think it will take just one thing to just turn. I think he's the right, personally I think he's the right man for the job. He's coming out and saying all the right things. He's Hibs through and through. He knows what it means to play for the club. He doesn't take no nonsense. You can see that in his interviews. He doesn't try and paper over cracks. He doesn't come out with excuses. He just tells you how it is. But inevitably, he's not getting results now. So it just depends. It's one of them. You're torn. You're torn as a pundit looking at it. You don't want to see anybody losing their job. But
Liam, was that defeat last time out at Dundee, the 4-1 defeat? Was that the worst this season for individual mistakes?
Yeah, I think it's just been a plethora this season, to be honest, and it's come from all over the park. But like Lee says, the performances haven't all been bad. Like, it's 14 points or something from winning positions that we've lost so far this season. So even if you think of like a handful of them, if we'd have turned a couple of draws into wins or a couple of losses into draws, we'd be a wee bit further up the table. But no, Dundee was it was pretty poor, really poor.
Well, maybe the spark that you need will come from taking on a team that themselves find themselves almost floundering despite having lost once this season. But Lee, will St Mirren's win at Aberdeen help Hibs tonight, or will the old adage of beware of a wounded animal hit Hibs tonight?
I think, unfortunately for Liam, I think it will be the second one. I think Aberdeen are on such a good run. A wounded animal going to Easter Road, and the last time they played there, it was obviously 4-0 win for Aberdeen. I think they will find something within themselves. They've played really good football, and when they've not played good football, they've won games, which doesn't seem to happen for Hibs. If they don't play well, they don't win. Aberdeen, they can play well and they can play not so good and grind out results. So no, I think I fear for Hibs tonight. I think Aberdeen will go there with a game plan and they'll be right up for this game.
And just, Liam, I'm going to bring you in on that in just a moment, but Lee, I always try and ask a very silly question in each podcast. I've probably asked about 10 of them already in this one, and we've only had 18 minutes. But will it be a relief for Aberdeen to have this unbeaten record go now? Jimmy Tulin will not face Tyrone Smith, both pre-match and post-match, asking the same question about how good is this unbeaten run. And almost they can, that's done. They can now just get on with the game as opposed to trying to protect this run.
No, because I think you listen to Jimmy Tulin and he always talks about it's just the next game. The old cliche, but I think he has actually drilled that into the players. They don't look too far ahead. They look at the next game. As soon as that St Mirren game was finished, he would have put it to bed. We went, right, Hibs next. Let's concentrate. Let's get the heads focused. So no, I don't think that'll make any difference to it. If anything, it'll make them even hungrier to try and get a result and try and get back on the winning trail, if anything.
Yeah. I'm sure Tyrone will be sharpening his pencil for other questions for Jimmy Tulin throughout the season. Liam, do you fear Aberdeen tonight, as Lee says, the wounded animal coming to Easter Road?
Yeah, I think just exactly like Lee said, they've been able to grind out results even when they've not been playing particularly well, something that we can't seem to do. Even when we're playing well, we can't seem to grind out any results. But no, it's they've been fantastic this season, and they've got winners all over the park and leaders all over the park, and it's something that we just don't have at the moment. We don't have anyone who can really grab the game by the scruff of the neck. I mean, you look at Shinnie, Nisbet, a lot of the players that Aberdeen have got that can really affect games, and you compare that to what we've got. I don't feel like we've got anywhere near the amount of game winners as they do. So I think they will probably be duly annoyed that they get beat the other night, and they'll take it out on us, I think.
And you mentioned at the start of the podcast that you detested a certain Lee Miller when you were watching Hibs as a youngster because he always used to score against you. I mean, tonight has Kevin Nisbet written all over it, does it not? The former Hibs player?
Absolutely. I mean, Kevin was fantastic when he was at us. You know, he scored goal after goal after goal in big games, and I'm really disappointed that the club didn't do anything to get him back in the summer. Because you look at the start that he's made at Aberdeen, and he's been scoring important goals at important times, and that is clearly what we are missing at the moment. I know we brought in Kieran Bowie, and he looks like he's going to be a bit of a player, but you know, he's going to be injured until well into next year. So Kevin Nisbet, what a player he is, really. He's got it all. He's strong, he's quick over short distances, he's a fantastic goal scorer, and I just hope that I hope he doesn't punish us too much tonight, but I've got a feeling that he probably will.
Lee, just before we go, I like to put like a rogues gallery up at the end of every podcast when it comes to your predictions. I had Gemma Fay on last week who got them all spectacularly wrong, which follows the pattern of all our pundits. We asked them to put a score or try and decide who wins tonight. Always wrong. So break the cycle for us. Give us a score prediction.
I've been quite good at this game, by the way. The last
not with me, you haven't. Not with me. The last two results. You may have been with all the lesser podcasts.
Aberdeen, I got the last two right. 2 each. I predicted 2 each at Celtic Park and 2-1 against Rangers. So I'm going to go.
I'm going to have to check the tape. You went 2-2 at Celtic Park and 2-1.
I promise you, yeah. Because Johnny messaged me about it. I'm gonna go for a 2-0 victory for Aberdeen. Sorry, Liam.
Right, I'm going to check the tape, Liam. See if this 2-0 victory comes up for Hibs tonight. You're going to detest Liam Miller even more.
Even more.
What do you think, Liam?
Listen, put my neck on the line. 4-0 Hibs.
Wow.
That's now we're talking. There we are. Listen, I've said a couple of times you detest Lee Miller. Who could detest Lee Miller? The non-detestable Lee Miller. Lee McLennan, thank you very much from the Hibs Ramble podcast. Lee, great to have you on as always, and thank you for your predictions. We will write those up, chalk them up, and we'll be in touch when they go spectacularly wrong. Listen, thanks to Lee, thanks to Liam, thanks to Mark Critchley early as well. Really good insight on Patrick Stewart, the new chief executive who starts next month at Rangers. Tonight, Hibs Aberdeen. It's the only show in town, and it's live for this on BBC Radio Scotland. Sports Sound on air from 7 o'clock. Highlights too on the telly. BBC One Scotland and the iPlayer 10:55. We're back tomorrow, bright and early as ever. Don't miss a thing. Subscribe to us on BBC Sounds. Have push notifications turned on. I don't need to tell you all this because you know what to do. Just make sure you get the Scottish Football Daily podcast. For now, though, I'm Phil Goodlad. Enjoy the beautiful game, and we'll speak again soon.
This is the shocking moment English football has been dreading.
My name is Moses Swabu, and I used to be a professional footballer, but then I got in deep with organised crime and became a match fixer operating in the English League.
A match-fixing investigator has highlighted 2 matches he says appear to have suspicious betting patterns.
How honest are you going to be with me?
This is 100%. Join me for Sports Strangers Crimes presents Confessions of a Match Fixer. Listen on BBC Sounds.